every single day so far in 2016, and probably before then, but let's just focus on 2016. Every single day in 2016, the police in this country have killed a black person. And when they say black person described their way. So they are black, Latino, Chicanos, or Latinx, Chicana X people who are not being counted as black. Sometimes there are black people from the Caribbean who are not being counted as black. Sometimes there are black people from Africa who are not being counted as black. Black people, you get the hint?
Yes.
So it's who they're defining as black, and it still is almost 200 people since January 1st of 2016. There's 365 days in the year. But don't worry, no one's left out. 545 people have been killed by police since January 1st. How many days are there in a year?
365.
So we're at a clip of more than 2 a day. So that's an issue that is a serious issue. It is an issue of which we really need to stop playing, as my son would say, and really need to sit down and figure out what can we do. Now, we have these discussions about reform. And what does reform usually look like? Let's get a call out in some orderly fashion. Let people raise hands and I'll point at folks. Of ideas that people have about police reform that we're used to hearing or not used to hearing. Go ahead.
Civilian oversight.
Civilian oversight. Let's put that on the dry erase board. Don't forget it. What else?
She stole my answer.
Oh, there you go. Mike always causing trouble. Yes, in the back.
Police cameras.
Police body cameras, dash cameras as well. What else? Yes.
Police living in the community they serve.
Police living in the community they serve. What else?
More minority cops.
More cops of color. What else? Or other marginalized groups. What else?
Additional training.
Additional training. Training is one that's raised a lot. What else?
Yeah, I would say sensitivity dialogue such as this, where we can address problems.
Right, dialogue, talks, some kind of conversations. Yes.
Community-based policing.
Right, community-based policing, this broad conversation. Yes.
And within that, the police actively involved in youth groups.
Police
and
actively involved in youth groups. Okay, last one back.
Civil rights training to the police and meditation classes and anger management.
Civil rights training, that's one. Meditation classes, got some yoga, some and zen in their lives. And training. Okay, I'm going to give you one last one. Go ahead.
Demilitarization of the police.
Demilitarization of the police. Yeah. Okay? Now, that's relatively a new conversation, right?
Police.
But most of the conversations that we've had, or most of the issues that you've raised, are things that have been talked about before. Civilian review boards. Do we have civilian review boards?
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you have heard of civilian review boards that are in existence in LA County. Right? So in LA, yeah, Santa Monica don't have it. Now, what's interesting about the community review boards, because we have LA, the city of LA has community review boards, okay? There's other cities around the country that have community review boards. Even if we focus right here just in the general greater LA area. But what is interesting about, what is the purpose? Why do people want to have community review boards?
Accountability.
What do people think is going to happen with the community review board? Yes.
They think erroneously that citizens will be harder on the police than the police will be on themselves.
First thing, LAPD right now, there is a push by the police union to get rid of having their board of rights being done by police personnel. Because they found that police personnel are actually harder on police than civilians are. Because civilians love them some police. How do you know? Turn on TV. NCIS, Law and Order 1, Law and Order 2, Law and Order 3, CSI 1, 2, and 3, Hawaii 5-0, Hawaii 2-5. Cops. Comedy cop shows, right? And the officer that is loved the most, from Hill Street Blues to Law and Order, is the one that slams suspects against the wall, break suspects' fingers, threaten suspects. That's the ones we love, because they will do anything to get to the truth. Right? Dirty Harry make my day. Right? The vigilante, semi-vigilante cops that kind of do things that break the rules, but it's all right in the end because they always get the bad people. So literally, the LAPD union is asking for civilians because they know that y'all love them so much, and the dirtier, hairier they are, the better. And that you will let them get away with what their own folks, as easy as they are on them, will not let them get away with. Okay? So that's the first thing we know. What else do we know about civilian review boards?
They don't have any power.
They have no power. They cannot discipline people. They cannot review reports and records. Because personnel records in the state of California for police officers are confidential. Even as an attorney, when we do, like there's a special motion, you can do a pitches motion in order to get information. We don't get the reports. We just get the name of the person who made the complaint and whatever their last contact information is, which could be completely fictitious, right? Because they don't want the police coming back and harassing them. So we don't have nada, other than that they've had complaints. We don't know what the complaints are. We don't know the basis of the complaints. There was a Senator Leno, who tried to, on several occasions, this last time was this year, get some legislation passed to make it so that where there's documented actual finding by the police department of misconduct, or where the police officer is investigated for death or deadly harm, that we would be able to see those reports in the public, and every single police department, DA's office, prosecutor's office that could get a hold of folks in the legislature to say, don't do that, did so. And it failed. Did not pass. Didn't even make it past committee. And you would think that if an officer is found to have engaged in misconduct, found to have engaged in some kind of serious bodily injury or death of another person in a way that is that the police department says is misconduct, that they would let us get that information. But they don't want us to even have that. Okay? So these civilian review boards, they're there, and they end up really being, if you don't have the teeth, which none of them have, they are the buffer. They are the thing that makes you feel like a treadmill, except you're not losing any weight. And you feel like you're going somewhere because you keep going there, in the case of LAPD, every Tuesday, and screaming and hollering and getting arrested and everything else. And meanwhile, Waukesha Wilson dead in custody. Meanwhile, Keith Bursey, shot dead in the street, unarmed, handcuffed. Meanwhile, people are still dying and being killed by the police. Right? System playing a rope-a-dope with us right now, where they're just taking our blows and letting us pretending that something's happening with us, that they're engaging with us, that things are changing. And meanwhile, things are not changing. People are dying. Or if they're not dying, they're being beat up. Or if they're not being beat up, they're being disrespected in some kind of way. Because all level of spirit side is still spirit side. Spirit side as in the killing of spirit, whether it involves physical harm or not. Right? And so, when we look at civilian review boards, is that actually a reform? What does it change?
Nothing.
Nothing. Body cameras. We had a whole conversation. President Obama's talking about body cameras. All of these different departments talking about body cameras. People were surprised that some of the police departments were like, "Oh, body cameras, we'll do that. That's fine." Why wouldn't they? Did we see Eric Garner on camera?
Yeah.
Laquan McDonald on camera?
Yeah.
What does camera do? Camera just becomes a way for us to watch people die.
Yeah.
We have watched more, at least for me, I have watched more people die in real life over the past 3 years than I have in all the other 70 years I had before. I know I look young. I mean, we're watching people be killed. We're watching people die. We're watching people get shot point blank range as they're pinned down on the ground in the chest. We're watching people then get flipped over and shot again in the back. We're watching this. So what are body cameras supposed to do? I had a case in Pasadena where the body camera kept going off and on. Well, it wasn't going off and on. They had clips. All the clips they gave me were like 45 seconds and then 10 seconds and then 2 minutes. And I was like, I need the whole film. Like, you've given me pieces of film. And the prosecutor told the judge, well, no, that's how we did it, because the cop kept turning it off. And I was like, was he allowed to turn it off? And the prosecutor was like, well, Pasadena, they can do that. And the judge was like, okay. And they just went on to the next. So what do body cameras do? What have they done? I mean, some of these reforms are in action. What have they done? Give me another one you guys talked about. Dialogue. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Man, we will be talked to death.
Yeah.
We are being talked to death. If we had other folks dying at the rate that we're dying and they knew about it, because they are. I mean, if you have 545 people being killed by police and 200 of them about are black people, if we do the math, about 345 are not black people. Maybe because you don't realize that they're killing you too, you unconcerned. Or your concern level is at a dialogue level, where you're willing to sit down and continue to have conversations. I don't know what you're having conversations about. Are the police not aware that there's a problem? I don't think they're not aware that there's a problem. Is the community not aware that there's a problem? I don't think the community is not aware that there's a problem. So what are we talking about? Oh, body cameras, that's what we're talking about. Setting up civilian review boards, you get my drift? At some point we have to do something beyond talking, because people are dying on a daily basis, or more than daily basis. Right? We're just talking about the people that are documented, that have sent their information, which is not necessarily up to date at this point. What other measures do we talk about that are reform measures?
Uniform reporting standards?
Oh, yes. Hold on to that and give that back to me. The training, right? The training. We have all this conversation about training. I'm not sure what people are supposed to be trained extra on. How many of you have actually looked at the procedures for most, or for any law enforcement agency? Raise your hand if you're not a cop yourself. How many of you have actually looked at the procedures? Okay. Do the procedures say, when you see people and you don't know if they're armed and they're walking down the street, that you should shoot them? The procedures are there. Judge Terry Hatter, I don't know if he's still on the bench anymore. There was a case, brother. There was a case in which, a long time ago, the Vikings, that thing that Tanaka was part of, who's headed off to jail for 5 years, that he said was not a racist organization. The Vikings used to send dogs to tear up black and brown people, just as a sport, like for fun. And that was amongst just one of many things that they did. And the NAACP Legal Defense Fund sued them, and I was a student then, so it tells you how long ago it was. I was a student then, and we were a part of, I was helping with that lawsuit. And at the end of the day, the NAACP, MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, represents the legal organization representing Asian American Pacific Islander folks. They all did this lawsuit together, and they asked Judge Hatter to force the police department to stop doing these things, okay? Judge Hatter took the time to look through all of the policies and procedures of the Sheriff's Department. And then he called us to come into court, and he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the sheriffs to follow their own rules. I'm not going to make up a single other rule. I know you guys have all these new rules you want me to make. I'm not going to do that. If they just follow their own rules, they'll be okay. You should have seen county council, the attorneys for the county. Oh my God! How can they do that? It's not going to work. We got to work with the agencies. I mean, they literally were falling apart about doing their own rules, following their rules. Nothing new. And we know that their rules can keep them from killing people, even people who are armed. And why do we know that? Why do we know that? Raise hand talk.
Happens.
It happens.
Huh?
It happens.
Right. It happens with who?
White people.
White people. White people. As my child would say, Google it. White people with guns, white people with knives, white people with machetes, white people with hatchets. White people cussing them out when they get pulled over by the police. Right? And mysteriously they don't die.
Right.
Even when they get shot in the leg, they get shot in the arm, they get shot in places that don't get you killed. It's amazing. They don't get jumped on and shot in the chest. They don't get told to reach for their ID. Can you get your ID? No, they reach for their ID. You know, we think about what happened in Minnesota. Remember, this happened to an elder black man in Georgia. He was at a gas station and they pulled in after. Remember, he got out. They told him to go get his ID. He turns to get his ID, and then they shoot him. And he's like, "You shot me." And they're like, "Oh, you reach into the car." He's like, "You told me to get my ID." It's so ugly. They shoot you and they make you talk to them and still explain what's going on. Right? So we have to be clear that when we talk about these various reforms like training, there's no more training you can give. You know, you look at me and you can't tell that I'm a human being who these procedures apply to. What am I supposed to train you about? What additional training are we supposed to get? You know, talk about sensitivity training. What more are we supposed to do? Hold on, because I got to do the thing. But we're going to do a discussion, so don't worry. Right?
Well,
and so,
have the video.
Okay, good. Well, let's do the video.
You just wrap up of whatever you want to, and then we'll go to video, and then we'll discussion.
Okay. We can stop.
She was on fire right now.
Okay.
Maybe what your thoughts are about the solution before we see the video.
Okay, we can do that. So when we look at these various reforms, and again, when we look at all the reforms that we talk about and that we hear folks talk about, there are very few of those reforms that are not actually already being implemented in many places and are failing. When people are dying, you can't do like 10-year experiments. And some of these, that police commission, you know, the LA Police Commission is considered one of the elite citizen review boards in this country. Loretta Lynch came out here to give them an award. Right? The LAPD, they've done such a great job working with the community. And the police commission is considered, you know, the most murderous police department in 2016. And the police commission is supposed to be top notch. And that police commission's been in existence since after Rodney King. A 20-year failure on the blood, the deaths of black folks, brown folks, poor folks, marginalized folks, transgender folks. That's acceptable? It can't be acceptable. We have to really believe it's not acceptable. And when we believe it's not acceptable, when we accept that this experiment has failed, completely failed, and it's a new experiment. I try to tell people all the time, before crack cocaine and the war on drugs, if you really know it's a war on black people and a war on brown people. Before crack cocaine, now the people who are older in here, you know, remember I'm 73, so no one has to be shamed to try to not act like they're not old, you know, an elder, okay? Black people didn't call the police.
That's right.
Call the police for what? We were very clear that the police were a problem. As a congresswoman once told me, everyone had a back room, and sometimes you had to deal with stuff in the back room. Okay? But people were very clear that, hey, we don't call the police, we deal with this ourselves. Right? If people have to go to your house to come and explain to folks how you're a thief, then you don't get divided into the other house parties, because everybody knows you're a thief, and they don't want you to take their stuff. And then you have to kind of redeem yourself, because people, if you ask for water, people point to the water hose, talking about, there's water, go ahead, turn it on, it works. Because everyone knows now that you're the thief. Right? So we didn't call the police, because LAPD, and I'm going to focus on Los Angeles for a moment, it literally recruited people from the South and from the Midwest and from these areas that they knew had no love for black folks. And based on the way the policing started, the history of policing, the foundation of policing in this country, coming out of the slave catching tradition, coming out of the let's get the black folks in line after the Reconstruction tradition, black people understood even up into the 70s that you did not call the police. Okay, you try to handle this yourself. The police were the last resort, almost like the social worker. Right? There were certain entities that we thought, hey, they're from outside. If they come in, we're going to have a problem. And then we got hit with crack cocaine. And crack cocaine was such a gut punch to our community. It's like people were doing things that you never thought they would do. You know, you couldn't even stop and help someone whose car looked like it was stalled on the freeway because it could be a setup. You know, so people took advantage of our community-ness that you hear us talk about often, took advantage of our bonds to one another as black folks, as brown folks, as folks in, Southeast Asian folks, and said, oh, great, I can fool you with that love that you have for the people. So it became dangerous as black people, as brown people, to be open, to be loving. And so we replaced that openness and love with what? 4 letters, starts with F.
Fear.
Fear. We became terrified of our neighbors. We started talking about our own children and grandchildren like they were an alien race that had been dropped from heaven. And we didn't care what the hell people did to them. Just get them away from us, because they scare us. Because that's what crack cocaine does to many people. It makes people scary. It's not a race thing, it's a drug thing. And we were so unprepared. And so when the government, with its war on drugs, blacks, decided that, hey, we can help you. Look, we can do for you. You're not going to have to be worried because we will protect you. We'll get rid of these people. We'll get them off the street. We'll stop them from committing crimes, from carjacking you, and from going in your house and burglarizing you, and from stopping you on the street and robbing you. We're going to stop them from doing all of that because you don't seem to be able to stop them. And what did we say, black people and brown folks? Hallelujah. Woo, thank God. Anytime they asked us to vote for more police, we'd be like, what, just 10,000 more? Dang, we need 20,000, right? We'd be angry. It wasn't enough police. And so we invited them in. And we started using them for everything. All right, the neighbor's too loud. We call the police. Right? All this social work. We see someone in the street, they seem like they have mental issues. We call the police. We call the police for everything. The gas, I'm serious, the heater's busted. We call the police. We call the police for everything. Everything. That's when 911 people get angry. They're like, this is not an emergency. Because we called the police for everything. They became the solution. 2 plus 2, 4 divided by 12, the square root of 465, the tangent of 12, everything was the police. And so when you talk about what we're about to talk about now, people get terrified. Because they think, like a friend of mine said, I don't want to live in a world without police. Because in her mind, a world without police is what?
Chaos.
Right, because the police are the ones that are keeping black people, because you know how terrible we are, from just stabbing and killing and robbing each other. And you. We would just be marauding into white neighborhoods like something out of Game of Thrones. Slaughtering all white people if it were not for the police. That thin blue line that separates us from the animals that happen to look like black and brown folks. And I mean, I say this in a joking way, but I'm really deadly serious, because it is deadly serious. And so, because of that, when we start talking about things like defunding the police, taking all of this money, you know, cities are putting just huge percentages of their money into the police. The police have things that I don't know why they have the things. You know, they have helicopters, they have, tanks, they have all these weapons, they have militarized weapons, they have all of these things. You're thinking, what are we doing here? Like, what is going on that you really think that you need all of that? Because remember, in the 80s and 90s, 911 is a joke. We couldn't even get the police to bring those things in there where we called them. They would only bring them in when they wanted to. The dope house would be there working, like McDonald's, open 24 hours. And nothing was happening to those people when we called, right? So all of this equipment and items that folks have, why do they have all of that? And those things are military grade, so they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And so when we talk about defunding the police, people get afraid. But that money could, you know how many libraries are closed down because money has gone to police? How many programs are not happening that we know that programs are the things that help to save our communities, that help to give people ways to express themselves, things to do. And these places are being closed. But you don't hear of any reductions in the police budgets. In fact, we keep getting more and more police and increasing the budgets, right? So if we defunded the police and invested in community, that's one way that we start to move in the right direction, right? So we got to defund. We got to demilitarize, or disarm, as I say. Maybe other people say it too, but I like disarm better, because demilitarize kind of makes it seem like we just got to get rid of the AK-47s. You know what I'm saying? We just got to get rid of all the weapons, just all of them. Disarm. There are some folks that are on terrorism. If you look at Great Britain, for example, they have armed police that deal with terrorism, etc. But the average Bobby is not carrying a gun. And the people of England who commit crimes are not doing carjacking in a sweeter way. They're not like, excuse me, could you please just, I need that call. Can I have your call? Give me the keys, please. That's not what's happening. But because there's an understanding, a sense in the community, the sense in the country about arms, about guns, that you don't have in this country. In this country, when you think police, you think guns, cops and robbers. When you're a kid, right? Pow, pow, hiding and running. So the notion of cops without guns or without weapons that you can use to blow up stuff like they do on TV is really something that is odd to us. But there are police officers, all over this world in civilized so-called countries that do not carry guns like they do in this country, period. It exists, and they still have people there that commit crimes, and they're able to deal with it, right? So we have to look at, and the weapons are what is costing so much. The tanks is what is costing so much. Refitting and refurbishing all of these cars is what is costing so much, and what is taking away from us, the people. So we've got to talk about this demilitarizing, and then we've got to talk about dismantling. And dismantling sounds exactly like what it looks like. Grabbing pieces and parts, taking it apart, right? And we've got to replace it with something else. And that's the part that's scary to people, because when they can't think of what that something else could be. So when you say they hear dismantling, like I said, they hear chaos. It's like, oh my God, the criminals will then just be in charge, right? But there is a way that we are able, it's going to have to be, hard work. When I talk about hard work,